I was a woman dying from a terminal illness. But to the man I loved, I was nothing. Even when I was alone in a hospital bed, begging for help, he was too busy fooling around with someone else. There was no need for proof Tony Kamel was right. All of it was orchestrated by Latina Mera. Disgust and hatred had long reached the extreme. Jason Smith's eyes were now void of emotion. He knew the real culprit had never been Latina Mera, was always him. Since Latina Mera loved acting so much, Jason Smith decided to send her somewhere better, where she could fully display her talent. Just after her miscarriage, Latina Mera was forcefully taken by a group of bodyguards in black and locked up in a mental asylum full of all kinds of actors to keep her company. Every day, Latina Mera was treated as a psychiatric patient medicated, shocked until she was completely unrecognizable. Meanwhile, the Mera Corporation went bankrupt shortly after. No one was able to save her. Julia Lopez felt like she'd had a very long dream, reliving the life she had wasted away. At the very beginning, when she first met Jason Smith, she had screamed in her dream, "Don't go over there. Don't walk that path. Don't meet him. But dreams are just dreams." Everything marched inevitably toward its end. 9 years. Love had long faded, or rather, it vanished the moment Jason Smith betrayed her. For Julia Lopez, it had just been a slow death by 1,000 cuts. Slice by slice, bloody and torn, she kept holding on. Only when she was nothing but bare bones did she finally let go and walk away. But Julia Lopez had forgotten her heart was still beating in her chest. Jason Smith turning away once more was like a blade stabbed right into that heart. Her heartbeat stopped instantly. Slowly opening her eyes, all she could see was white. There was no pain, no weakness. If it weren't for Tony Kamel's voice in her ears, she'd have thought she was already dead. Tony Kamel's eyes were sunken, his face unshaven and disheveled, bloodshot and exhausted. He hadn't closed his eyes since Julia Lopez fell unconscious. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have never left you alone. It's my fault. I shouldn't have brought you there." Tony Kamel slapped himself hard again and again. "Idiot. It's me who let you down, Tony Kamel. In our next life..." Julia Lopez grabbed his hand tightly. Her grip was strong, like her body had never been ill at all. "I don't want a next life," Tony Kamel sobbed, shaking his head. "You said you'd live 100 years for me. Don't lie to me, please." Julia Lopez gave a faint smile. She wanted to wish Tony Kamel a long, healthy life. He was such a good man. But saying it out loud would just make him sad. So she kept it in her heart. She truly hoped Tony Kamel would find someone new and forget about her soon. "I think I see my parents. They're here to take me," Julia Lopez whispered. Tony Kamel's voice faded as her soul lightened, her heavy body turning feather-light. She closed her eyes, still wearing a smile. "Vee." The heart monitor flatlined. Tony Kamel had heard that sound before, but never had it hit like this. It smashed through his soul like a hammer, tearing his heart to shreds. When Jason Smith arrived, all he saw was an empty, cleaned hospital bed. He didn't even get to say goodbye. The tall man collapsed, as if his soul had been ripped away. He fell to his knees and let out a long, anguished howl. Tony Kamel laid Julia Lopez's ashes to rest beside her parents. He never expected Jason Smith had gone mad and dug up her remains. No one could find Jason Smith. It was like he had vanished from the face of the earth. Later, someone said they saw a man who looked like Jason Smith sailing out to sea on a yacht, and he was never seen again. Tony Kamel built a cenotaph for Julia Lopez next to her parents' grave. Every year, he would visit with Coco and Brady. The rest of the time, Tony Kamel did charity work in remote, underdeveloped areas. He didn't consider himself particularly kind-hearted. He just wanted to numb himself through work anything to stay far away from the city. No matter which city he went to, Tony Kamel always saw traces of Julia Lopez everywhere. He never saw himself as some love expert. He wanted to forget Julia Lopez, but emotions aren't something one can just control. So be it. Let it be. If he couldn't forget her, then he wouldn't. As long as he remembered her, Julia Lopez would still leave her mark on the world. Standing before Julia Lopez's grave, Tony Kamel gently touched her photo, smiling and radiant hand, said solemnly, "Julia, you promised. In the next life, don't break your word this time." Tony Kamel had been the school heartthrob, top of his class, but also a longtime bachelor choice, of course. His classmates jokingly called him the Naoki Iri of C University, and Tony Kamel didn't deny it. After all, there was no way he'd fall for a Kotoko Aihara-type airhead. There was no real-life Kotoko around him. Either girls like that only dared to have secret crushes and maybe cheer for him during basketball games. In reality, only someone like Ana Lopez, equally accomplished. Smart, stunning, with a trail of admirers, had the confidence to stand beside him. Even if she admired Tony Kamel, she wouldn't chase him. Everything was natural, graceful, but later Tony Kamel learned there was a third kind of girl in the world. That girl was gorgeous. As for her brains, well, that was a mystery. She made it into C University, so her IQ was surely above average. But every time she saw him, she looked a little goofy. The first time, she didn't even get a word out before she burst into tears. Like some crazed fan meeting her idol for the first time, Tony Kamel's heart skipped a beat. Was she going to leap at him next? But instead, she wiped her tears, flashed a smile, and said, "I'm Julia Lopez. I've come to find you in this lifetime," then ran off. What the heck was that? Trying to leave a strong impression? Well, if submission accomplished, Julia Lopez knew his hobbies and habits better than his own mother. Seriously, it was like she had a PhD in Tony Kamel. She even knew his favorite guilty pleasure recipe snack sticks. Mr. Tony Kamel, the cold, aloof med student and academic star, secretly loved that kind of junk food? No one would believe it. His roommates were all clean freaks who constantly bashed junk food, so Tony Kamel could only eat them in secret. When Julia Lopez handed him a bouquet made of individually wrapped spicy sticks, Tony Kamel surrendered. They sat on the track field together, munching and laughing. And despite how invasive her undercover research had been, Tony Kamel couldn't bring himself to dislike. Eve must have been bewitched. Unlike Naoki Iri, Tony Kamel wasn't emotionally stunted. He'd never dated before, but once he recognized his feelings, he acted on them. If it weren't affection, then what was it? He couldn't even imagine reacting this way. If any other girl had done what Julia Lopez did, he'd probably shut them down on the spot. Before they even graduated, Julia Lopez brought him home to meet her parents. Her family was thrilled. Tony Kamel looked confident on the outside, but he was secretly a nervous wreck. Luckily, he passed with flying colors. From meeting to dating to marriage, it all went smoothly. Except when it came to having children. Julia Lopez was inexplicably firm on not rushing it. She couldn't explain why, just said, "The time's not right." So Tony Kamel let her be. His wife wasn't ready. What else could he do? If his wife wasn't happy, how could he be? So he blocked all pressure from both families. He took full responsibility, saying he was too busy with work to help at home and asked everyone to wait a bit longer. "You silly child, we can help raise the baby for you." Don't say that raising a child is our own job. But in their 9th year of marriage, Tony Kamel noticed something strange. Julia Lopez was acting a bit obsessive. She started going to the hospital for full-body checkups every single month. She was healthy, yet next month she'd go again to a different hospital. "Honey, do you think you're infertile or something?" That was the only explanation Tony Kamel could think of for her constant medical visits. But that didn't make sense. He'd always been careful with contraception. Julia Lopez hugged him with sadness in her eyes and murmured, "I'm afraid of dying. I want to live a long life, just to stay with you." Tony Kamel felt like something sharp pierced his heart, clenching it tight. He couldn't help but cover her mouth, and, for once, scolded her with uncharacteristic sternness. "Don't say that. You're fine. You'll always be fine." After that, Julia Lopez seemed to let go. She stopped going to the hospital for checkups. One day, she even dragged Tony Kamel on a trip to a seaside city. "Why are we going here?" Tony Kamel was a little confused. It was just a regular coastal town, not a popular tourist destination. "To find my fated one," Julia Lopez replied, eyes full of longing and wonder. Tony Kamel pretended to be angry. "What? I thought I was your fated one. Are there others I don't know about?" And just like that, they ended up with a cat and a dog. Nothing fancy, just a couple of local rescues. Tony Kamel fell for them instantly. On a whim, he named the kitten Coco, which made Julia Lopez laugh and cry at the same time. She muttered something he didn't quite understand. Life is so strange. Some things change, some things stay. The bad turns better, and the good things remain. I'm grateful to the heavens for their mercy. On the way back home with their new pets, they passed the central city square. The massive outdoor LED screen was playing an interview with the man considered the most eligible bachelor in Haicheng Smith Group's CEO, Jason Smith. Asked about his single status, Jason Smith admitted he was straight, but had no desire to date. At that point, he hesitated, frowned slightly, and said with rare emotion, "I have this odd feeling that the other half of me is somewhere in this world. Our fate runs deep, yet feels so shallow. I don't know how to explain it." Girls standing around the screen swooned and gushed, "That's so romantic. I wonder who his missing half really is." Julia Lopez just smiled faintly and looked away, no longer interested. She intertwined her fingers with Tony Camel's and said, "Hubby, I'm ready to have a baby. Let's go home and get to work tonight."